Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of In the Spotlight. I'm Mike Kenichi, and the background you see, of course, is The Way of the Cobra, which was a great book that came out in 2022. The man who wrote that book is a tremendous person, tremendous actor, writer, producer, Emmy Award winner, and it is my privilege to introduce to you. He is making an impact, especially on Cobra Kai, on season 6 as well, the one and only Sean Kanan. So, Sean, I want to thank you for coming on today. Thank you for joining us again.
Well, thanks
Real
for having
honor.
me. I appreciate it. It's an honor to be here with you.
Yeah. So Sean, it's funny. Last time we talked, we couldn't really talk about season 5 because it did not
I
come out
know.
yet. So I kind of wanted to review it a little bit. And
Sure.
boy, I'll tell you, what a way for your character Mike Barnes to return. He came on episode 3 of season 5. And the funny thing is, Sean, the one thing that I have learned about Danny LaRusso throughout this whole series run is he still has the trust issues. He still believes that how guys were when they were kids back in 1984, that's how they're going to be now, and he has a tough time realizing that when you're kids, you don't always make the right choices, but these are grown adults. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, okay. I see where you're coming from, but I mean, Barnes put a psychological hurt on Daniel, like Clubber Lang did to Rocky Balboa. It wasn't the same as Johnny and his buddies, which was arguably really bad. But Barnes really got in his head, and you know, with people forget, but Barnes basically, he and his buddies threatened to sexually assault Jessica,
Yeah.
and used all sorts of racial slurs with Miyagi. I mean, he was a lot worse, and so I don't blame Daniel for being highly suspect till he's really convinced that this guy has made a profound change.
Right. And I love what the writers do with each character, though, Sean, and especially your character, because Mike Barnes could be very serious at times. He could be funny, and Mike Barnes still has some demons, which I
Oh
kind of
yeah,
noticed in season 6 that
yeah.
those demons are still there, and we'll talk about that in a sec. But I'll tell you what a hilarious scene between Mike Barnes and Chosen. I mean,
Yeah.
Chosen thinks that Mike is messing with Daniel, and he just starts attacking him, and the two of them go at it. And that's the other thing that's great, Sean, for you, and I think it's great for other cast members, is you didn't get the Mike Barnes character had no interaction with Johnny or Chosen, but now he gets that interaction with them. So it's not
Right.
just Mike Barnes and Daniel. So I think that's great that this
Fantastic.
that's why this series is so special, because everybody kind of comes together.
Well, I mean, I think if you would have asked somebody walking out of the Karate Kid and the Karate Kid 2 and the Karate Kid 3, and if you were doing one of those exit interviews with moviegoers and said, hey, do you guys think that Johnny Lawrence and Chosen and Mike Barnes seem like they're kind of funny guys? I mean, I don't think anybody would have said yes, right? And it's just a testament, though, that Billy and Yuji both have really good comedic timing. And so, when you see them doing that, I mean, we're now on the 6th season, of course, but it really does take you in a completely different direction mentally from what you're used to seeing. And the audience had years to get used to those two, but I came on in season 5, and I don't think they were expecting to see that Mike Barnes does have a kind of a funny side to him.
Yeah, it definitely does. And the funny thing is, you mentioned this a few minutes ago, Sean, about the stuff that Mike Barnes did to Daniel. He did to you know, uh, Robin Lively's character. But the funny thing is that Daniel is very forgiven with Chosen and Mike Barnes. He's kind of let the past
Right.
pass, but he
Right.
still has trouble with Johnny. I mean, he's still, and Johnny,
What?
he bullied him, but he did not threaten to kill him. He didn't, Chosen and
In
Mike Barnes.
my head, and this is just my observation of it. I think that Daniel really likes Johnny and sees the potential in him. But when he sees him slipping back into being this guy that, you know, was sort of how he was in high school or whatever, it kind of frustrates Daniel. You know, I think with Barnes, it would be easier for him just to dismiss Barnes because he hasn't put in the time and the work that he has in forging a relationship that he has with Johnny. And I may be wrong, but and I think now, you know, you've got Chosen living at his house. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, you better either decide you like somebody living at your house, or, you know, what do they say about company and fish? They both start smelling after 3 days,
Yeah.
you know? So, but I mean, look, it's the classic kind of straight man, funny guy thing. You know, Daniel plays the straight man and he does it really, really well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the comedy comes from his frustration with the rest of us.
And the thing is, too, I wanted to get your take on Johnny and Daniel's relationship because even though they're different in a lot of ways, they are very similar in most ways. And the biggest thing, the biggest similarity between the two is they both care about these kids. They really do. Now, Johnny doesn't handle the kids with kid gloves like Daniel does, but Johnny cares about these kids. I mean, you could see it, and you see it in season 6, especially with Devin.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. You said Johnny doesn't handle the kids with kid gloves. And the first thing that came in my mind was that if it's the perfect thing to unify the two of them as senseis, because they really, the sum is stronger than the parts. The parts are very strong with both of them. But, you know, it's kind of like, I talk about this in my book. I say some of what I'm going to teach you is philosophical, and philosophy is great because philosophy teaches you to ask the bigger questions of yourself and the world around you. But philosophy without strategics and tactics and action is theoretical. It lives in your head. And really great tactics and strategy without the maturity of the philosophy to govern it is like a wildly slashing katana that's just cutting down everything in its wake, but it's not hitting its intended target because it's not disciplined by a governing philosophy. And I think that the two of, you know, Miyagi-Do and Eagle Fang, and they're just there's a really good unity that happens when they're able to come together, and the kids get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, definitely. Now let's talk about Mike, your character, Mike Barnes. At the end of episode 3 of season 5, his business burns down. He takes off, and we don't see him again until episode 10 of season 5. And it looks like he's gonna revert back to his old habits. But that's the thing I love about your character is, even though he, you know, looks like he's gonna go back to his bad ways, he really is a good person who's just hurting right now because he lost. That's his livelihood.
Yeah, I definitely don't see Mike Barnes as being a bad guy. I see him as a flawed guy, you know. But so's Daniel, so's Johnny. You know,
Right.
It's kind of like, you know, it manifests differently with each one of them. But you know, I've always wondered, why would a 17-year-old kid be allowed to come down to a major metropolitan city like Los Angeles and start working for some guy that he didn't even know? You know, what was his home life like? And, you know, for me, I always had a backstory that, you know, Mike's mom needed an operation. And that's why he was so hell-bent on doing what he was doing, because he didn't hate Daniel. He really didn't. But how did that childhood play into his psychology as an adult? You know, we know Daniel had a loving mother, but still came from a broken home. And we thought that Johnny, you know, was like one of these to the manor born, silver spoon in his mouth kind of kids. And you learn that wasn't the truth at all. And I think it's, you know, kind of an interesting thing about people in general. You know, I mean, it's very easy to make some pretty quick empirical observations about people and draw a conclusion, but not always is that conclusion accurate, you know. And I think if you look at Barnes as a 17-year-old kid, you figure he'd grow up and wind up in prison. And there, I always say that to become a champion, a national champion, whether you like Barnes or not, you cannot deny the fact that there are certain qualities that he must possess that are the qualities of a champion. And those are sacrifice and self-discipline and, a lot of stuff, right? And so had he had better guidance, he probably would have been an exceptional human being. But he still has these things inside of him. And I think, in my head, the combination of his father-in-law who taught him how to make furniture and his wife kind of sanded out the rough edges, or at least some of them, right? And I even think to a certain extent, Daniel did. In my head, Barnes is not being paid to be a sensei. He's there because it's a way for him to further along his journey of redemption with Daniel, and not only do something for Daniel, but do something for these kids, because he didn't have a great upbringing and made a lot of mistakes. And, Barnes says, I don't want to see this happen to you.
Right, exactly. Now, Sean, let me ask you, obviously you've gotten to work with William, Ralph, but working with these kids has to be somewhat rewarding for you as well, because these are tremendous actors too. And I know a lot of them are in their early 20s, but they are exceptional actors who, in a lot of ways, they really make the show,
Sure. Yeah. The show doesn't work without them,
right.
being exceptional actors. No, they are. And I've said this before in other interviews, that it's so exciting to see them at this point in their careers, with a show that is just a worldwide phenomenon that's coming to a conclusion, and they're probably all going to go their separate ways. And it's going to be very interesting to see what each one of them does, given the fact that they're very talented, given the fact that they have a tremendous springboard, coming off Cobra Kai. And I really think the sky's the limit for all of them.
Yeah, most definitely. Now, two of the characters, I mean, we've seen Kreese this season. We haven't seen Terry Silva yet, and I believe we will. I really do. I don't think we've seen the last of him. But interestingly enough, it really looked like in the beginning of season 4 that Terry also had changed his ways. He was a decent guy, and somehow throughout season 4, he goes back to what he was in 1985. But Kreese, it's hard for me to really get a good read on his character, because when I think he's just as bad as can possibly be, there are some good qualities about him. I mean, he does seem like he cares about Tori. I mean,
absolutely.
I think he cares about Johnny to a degree, but I just can't figure out, like, there's like kind of like a little of him, he's good and he's bad. But what are your thoughts on both Terry and Kreese?
Well, I think it's a testament to what a great actor Thomas is, that he was able to pull the wool over everyone's eyes. I don't find a lot of redeeming qualities in Terry Silver. There are redeeming qualities in John Kreese. John Kreese is a broken hero, but still believes in, he still believes in a code. He says something about, to fight an enemy with heart, you have to become heartless. And so I think he's just on the wrong side of things. And from his perspective, he's fighting the good fight for something that he believes is right. That's my take on it. I don't know. We'll see as the rest of the episodes progress. But Terry Silver, I think, is very much motivated for Terry Silver.
Right, definitely. So, Sean, your character reappears in season 6, episode 4, and I just thought it was so cool. Number one, that karate gi that they have for Mike Barnes is just outstanding. I mean, that is tremendous.
I got to give a shout out to the costume designer Frank Helmer, and I had some input in it, which was great. I'm not saying that it's here right this second, but I've got a pretty good suspicion that gi is going to be framed and hanging in my man cave not too long.
Right. So, and it really is cool. I mean, I love it. I think like that was so creative by the costume designer
Amazing.
himself. I mean,
And especially because, when Frank when I saw the gi, I was like, oh, this is great. But when I really put together mentally, when he said, everyone else is wearing white gis, immediately from, a visual, from a visual aspect of seeing that red gi in a sea of white gis, it just stands out. It makes it look that much more dominant and powerful. And so I really appreciated that, I was the only guy wearing a different color.
right. So let's talk about episode 4, because now Mike Barnes gets to work with the kids. We hadn't seen that yet. He had been in 2 episodes prior, but it was mainly, with Johnny, Daniel, and Chosen.
Yep.
Now he gets to work with the kids. And what was really cool was poor Mitch forever has been getting nicknames that are not exactly, to his liking. And your character, Mike, gives him the nickname Muscles. So just talk about that a little bit.
Well, I mean, look, that was scripted. I mean, I didn't really, it was just scripted, and I said it, and I, there's no reason to believe that Barnes is aware of his other less flattering monikers, and he completely sold it. I think Barnes was just, having trouble remembering everyone's name, and was just whatever came to mind. And he threw it out there for some reason. I don't know why, but I thought it was pretty funny.
Right. And one of the things too that Barnes is doing is he does a little of both. He's gonna be a tough sensei, but he also is encouraging to the kids. You see that. And the thing of it is this is what we still see from both Daniel and Johnny, where they're still not completely on the same page, because you could tell Johnny likes the aggressive style of Mike, where Daniel has never been a fan of that. He's never been a fan of being tough on the kids. But I mean, I felt like your character did a great job, and it was perfect for them to have Mike Barnes decide, which kids were gonna, make the trip. Because I mean, if you had Daniel and Johnny do it, it would just be constant bickering, arguing, and you chose this person because you like him. You chose this person because you like her. So I thought that was a great job having Mike Barnes do that.
I think so too. It was important to me that even though I was playing it very much like a drill, I didn't want to make it look like I was taking any kind of sadistic pleasure in putting the kids through this. It was more that Mike was taking it deadly serious, because he knew that whatever they faced at the Sekai Taikai was potentially life-threatening. And I think he recognized that there was a gravitas, there was a responsibility that had been bestowed upon him by Daniel and Johnny. And he was going to make sure, even if he had to be, a real SOB to do it, that whoever he chose were the best choices to hopefully come out of that thing unscathed. And it was like, when Anthony got punched, I wanted to make it an even more empathetic moment with Daniel, making him understand, look, I'm not being an asshole here, but if you think this is bad, this is nothing. And there was no glee in Mike Barnes seeing Daniel's son being hurt, but it was like, wake up and smell the coffee, guys. We got how much time before, whoever's going over there is going to be facing, forgive the reference, the best of the best. And so I didn't want to play it like I was twirling a mustache or anything like that, because it wasn't about that.
Right. And what was ironic to me is I think Daniel believes that Johnny got to Mike Barnes with Devin, that's why Devin is, she's one of the 6. But in essence, I mean, now we're finding out Devin did something she shouldn't have done. But really, he made it fair. He had a competition, and she did win the competition to be one of the 6 people. So it wasn't favoritism. But I think right now, Daniel, he's kind of upset that Hawk didn't get chosen at first. And he feels like, Johnny went to Mike, but he doesn't realize that Johnny and Mike had like an all-out fight before they made peace with each other.
Yeah. I think when Daniel got that information from Mike, he was just like, I'm not even going to ask at this point. I mean, that's insane. But you know, I really did enjoy the fact that I think Mike and Johnny actually pretty much could be friends. I mean, I think they have a
Yeah.
mutual respect for each other. I don't think that fight occurred for any reason that had to do with the two of them disliking each other. I think Mike instigated it because he wanted to know if he still had, if he had a little grit left in him, and it's the two toughest rams on top of the hill bucking horns. But as soon as it was over, there was no hard feelings,
Yeah.
and Mike, Johnny compliments Mike and says from one bad boy to another, and Mike, out of a sense of honor and fair play, actually does exactly what Johnny asked, and he wasn't vindictive or spiteful or anything. It was he got beaten that time and said, okay, I wanted to see what I could do, and now I can live with myself. I don't even think he had to win. I just think he had to know for himself, could I still throw down if I had to? Because
Right.
I mean, think about it. There were those two circular saws going, and at no time, yes, they were played for dramatic effect, but neither guy was trying to force the other guy's head into a saw. It wasn't about that.
Right. And what I really like about Johnny's characters, I mean, he is really funny. I mean,
Oh my God, yeah.
he doesn't, he's still not in touch with today's world. He didn't know what an Uber was. He didn't know what Facebook was.
He's
So I mean,
he's an anachronism.
yeah. So he's really funny in that regard. But the thing that Danny and Johnny don't realize about each other is they help each other a lot throughout this series. Danny, even though he doesn't trust Johnny 100%, he gives him a job at his dealership. He's running a dojo with him. They care about these kids together. They've had dinner with the wives. They are trying to make peace. They are just still, they both, in my opinion, both of them have to understand that there are things they really like about each other, and some of the things I wouldn't say they dislike about each other, but they just don't always agree with each other about.
Right. Right. Well, their relationship was forged in competitiveness and conflict, and it's difficult when the DNA of a relationship is based on one thing, and then as adults you have to change it because it's simply not really acceptable behavior, and they revert back to that sort of origin story of who they were when they met. um, and I think we could all relate to the fact that there's like that one person in everybody's life you like, but God, they can get under your skin, and most of the time it's because you see something in them that is in yourself, that the thing you think you don't like about them is really the thing you don't like about yourself.
Yeah. Now, Sean, one of the things I thought that was really good at first, I got to say I wasn't crazy about it, but the more I thought about it, it prolongs this series because fans, I know they want to see all 15 right now, but when this thing is over, they're going to be upset that there's no more Cobra Kai. But they've put 5 episodes in July. Now they're going to put 5 in November, and then in early 2025, they'll put the final 5. Do you like how they're doing that? I mean, do you think that's a good idea?
I think it's a smart idea because it keeps the longevity of the final season going for an extended period of time. I mean, I think if I had to guess, it was a business decision based probably on Netflix model of acquiring the subscribers. I think that has something to do with it. And I mean, look, anticipation is half the fun. I mean, I know how I felt waiting. I went down and filmed this thing, and I knew it was going to be probably 8 months until I got to see it. And, I really wanted to see it, but as the day drew closer, I got more and more curious and excited about it. And I think the fans are going to be the same way. And so it's a way of prolonging the interest over an extended period of time. Because look, you can have the 15 episodes that are dumped all at once and there'll be a mania about it. And, in like a month, it kind of has died down. This will keep it going at a sort of a steady burn, and then it'll peak and then it'll burn. And peak again.
Yeah, definitely. Sean, it's hard to put into uh, one particular thing that you've done. I mean, listen, a lot of fans are always going to know you as Deacon Sharp. That's where your legacy is going to be for a lot of fans. There's also a little bit of AJ Quartermain. I know a lot of General Hospital fans see as that. But now, I mean, with your presence on Cobra Kai and you were in Karate Kid 3, you have a legacy with that movie as well and that franchise. And, it's a cult classic. So, I mean, you got to be very proud to be associated with this series. I mean, it has to be one of the highlights of your career.
For sure. I mean, absolutely. I always joke that if I've had one great talent in the entertainment business, is my ability to grab onto coattails that are, very famous coattails. I mean, I first got on General Hospital. It was a show that had been on for decades, and then I got on Bold and Beautiful, and still am, which is in the Guinness World Book of Records for being the most watched daytime drama in the world. I mean, it's distributed in, I don't know, more than 50 countries. And,
right.
Like with Bold and the Beautiful, you go on that show for a couple months and you're known worldwide by all of its fans. And of course, the Karate Kid Cobra Kai fandom is worldwide, and it's amazing. It really is. And I'm humbled and honored. And, 35 years later, I got to reprise this character. I mean,
yeah,
that never would have crossed my mind when I filmed the movie.
And what's cool about it too, Sean, is the character is getting redemption. He is redeeming himself. And now fans, when they go to watch Karate Kid 3, and they
see it with different eyes.
Yeah. You look at Mike Barnes differently. You say, okay, he was a jerk then, but look at him now, how he's finished. So, a lot of times it's really true what they say. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. But that's why this series is so great, because there's a lot of redemption in this series.
Well, I mean, look, the Karate Kid films, like the Rocky films, John Avildsen won the Oscar for Rocky. They tap into a visceral emotion that I think all human beings have. And that's that the underdog always has a chance to win, and that there's always hope. And in this case, the hope for redemption. People get second chances. And so I think it plays into something that is kind of in our hardwiring, that we're hardwired to have an emotional response to those sorts of stories.
Right.
Because we hope for them in our real life.
Exactly. So, Sean, when this comes to an end, I've heard so many discussions about maybe a sequel. Would you definitely be a part of some type of sequel if it's, attached to Cobra Kai?
I mean, I would certainly give it a very serious look. That's for sure. I mean, if the success of Cobra Kai and, the quality of the writing and everything else is any indication, yeah, of course I would. It'd be a blast.
Right.
I
so,
mean,
right.
I was say that, I mean, we're all going to be sad when this comes to an end, but it's not necessarily coming to an end.
Right. No, and it's going to be there forever for fans to always watch, because you've got to, in my opinion, you got to watch something 2 or 3 times before, because you miss parts in the beginning.
From your lips to God's ears, everyone watches it 2 or 3 times. I like where your head's at, man.
Right. So, Sean, real quick before we go, what can we expect for Sean Kanan towards the end of 24 and beyond? Any cool things you got coming up?
Yeah, well, I'm still on the Bold and Beautiful for CBS. Next year is going to be my 25th year since I started the show. My show that I created, Studio City, is now on the Roku channel and Tubi and the Dove channel and Amazon Prime. And I've got another project I'm starting next month that I'm really excited about. It's a show called Unsuited. And my wife and I are writing the 3rd installment of the Way of the Cobra book, which is called Cobra Couples. And October 27th, I'm giving a TEDx talk, which I'm very excited about. So, I'm always trying to stay busy.
Right. Well, Sean, I think what you do is just unbelievable. It's remarkable. I mean, you're always working hard. And the best thing about you, Sean, is, you never forsake your fans. You are always good to your fans.
I love the fans.
And I thank you for giving me a few minutes, and I look forward to seeing the rest of this series. And, Deacon Sharp needs to stick around, so don't go anywhere. So,
All right, buddy. Mike, thank you so much. And thanks to everybody who's watching. Take care of
thank you
yourself.
very much, Sean. Of course,
Okay.
folks, that's the one and only Sean Kanan. For In the Spotlight, I'm Mike Kenichi saying good night, everyone.